everyone. Welcome to Soul Talk with Sonia. I'm Sonia, and I know I have been away for a while, for a minute. Well, I have been marketing my books. I've been at two bookstores. I've been to some events selling my books, which I should have a copy of, which I don't, which are downstairs. But anyway, so my first book that I relaunched, it came out 10 years ago, was titled Single Ladies Living Whole in a Sexy World. I re released it, dropped the singles because I had a lot of married women talking to me about their lives, and God didn't give me the title single. That's something I put in. So when God gives you something, please write it down. So, Ladies Living Whole in a Sexy World and The Weight is Killing My Flesh, which are on Amazon. So, you want to get your copies. Now, the latter, The Weight is Killing My Flesh, is not about waiting to get married, it's about being in the waiting room. You know how you're in Target, you're in Walmart, and you're in line waiting? Okay, that's a normal wait. We're going to wait in line. But when you have been waiting for months and years and it doesn't seem like what God has promised you is going to manifest, that's when you're in the waiting room. And so you really want to check out The Weight is Killing My Flesh. And I talk about the 5 steps that God takes you through as you're in the waiting room. So since I have been away, I decided that, you know what, I need to invite a guest. So I just want to briefly tell you about our journey, my journey, my husband and I's journey to marriage. Because I was in the waiting room and I didn't get married until my 40s for the first time. And there were so many times I was depressed, feeling hopeless, like, is this going to ever happen? There were times I thought God had forsaken me, even though He promised He'd never forsake me. But that's just the enemy having you think that it's never going to happen. But God is a man that He can't lie. He cannot lie to you. So I just want to encourage those that are single to just hold on, wait, focus on your relationship with God, travel, start a business, write a book, play, screenplay, whatever God has given you. Work on that, work on your purpose, work on your side businesses, whatever God has given you, because the time that you have as a single, you can't get back. And when you become married, you have to then share your time. And that's the whole thing. So, long story short, I had gone to a stepping class for like the third time. So this is like my second or third instructor. And I said, this time I'm going to really learn Chicago stepping. So I had gone to class, and about the fourth class, um, the instructor said, hey, I'm going to take a break. And so he said, hey, Sonny, come over here, give me a high five. So I gave him a high five, and when our hands touched, my eyes blinked. And I call it a spiritual blink because then my eyes were open, and that's when God showed me, bam, this is your husband. I was like, okay, God. So I knew right away because God had spoken it to me. The problem is my husband didn't know right away. So I had to wait until God showed him that I was his spouse. So I kept going to class for about 2 more months. And then I said, you know what, God, this is too hard. And so I stopped going. I went to a different instructor, and I'm waiting. So I'm still seeing him out as we're going out dancing. And, we're dancing together, etc. But nothing is happening. So fast forward a year and a half later, God said to text him. This is a long story, but I'm making it short. So I said, oh, that wasn't God. So the next morning, I heard, God said text him. So I texted him and, just said hello. And he said hello back. And then I asked him if he could meet me at Panera. And this was like on a Sunday. And so we met at Panera December 13th, 2019. And, I said some things to him, and, it's like, I know, he said, I know, I've been praying about you. I still haven't gotten an answer. Then he paused. And then he said, I do have an answer. He said, you're my wife, and let's start dating. And so that's December, and he said he wanted to start premarital counseling. Started premarital counseling in January of 2020. We finished in February, and then March was the pandemic. So it happened that fast. We got engaged the first Sunday in August, and we were married the last Saturday in August. So we have just celebrated 2 years. And so it was a waiting room process, but when God showed me He was my spouse, I was also working on my book, The Waiting is Killing Me. And so I was waiting on God to tell him, and I was also writing the book. So God was giving me steps through my husband of the waiting room because I didn't have the steps then. So, ironically, God has a plan, and so you just have to wait with Him. That's what I talk about. And the wait is killing my flesh, and it's the difference between waiting with God and waiting on God. Because when you wait on Him, you will get so frustrated and irritated. But when you wait with Him, there comes a rest, a peace. So you want to get the books on Amazon so that you can check them out and know the steps to take when you're in the waiting room. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome my special guest, my husband, Lamont. Welcome to Soul Talk with Sonia,
Hi.
babe. Hey.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Okay, so we're just gonna get right into it. So the title of these clips this week, and this is the week of Christmas, or the day after Christmas, the week of the day after Christmas. So it's the 26th. And we're talking about going from singleness to being married because as a licensed professional counselor, I see so many unhappy married people, and then I see a lot of singles who are frustrated, irritated, and want to be married. And so you want to be prepared as a single so that you don't end up in divorce. Okay, because there's too many Christians getting divorced, which doesn't even make sense, which is a whole nother episode series by itself. All right, so we'll start with men. As a man, so we're getting ladies, we're getting a male's perspective today. And so we want to talk about why do you think men cheat?
Why do I think men cheat? Um, that's kind of a broad question. Because there are a lot of reasons why men cheat. But at the crux of it, I always like to just bring things down to the bare minimum, if you would say. Why do men cheat? As it pertains to marriage, are you asking, or is this a dating situation, or is it they're married, or
Both,
both?
so
Okay.
generally speaking.
Um, I think that men cheat because there's no real um, commitment, as you know. In a dating situation, yeah, there's an agreement, but no real commitment in the relationship in terms of what his role is going to be and commitment to move forward towards something. I think that if you come into a relationship, there's a reason for it, there's a purpose behind it, and dating is not the same as uh, courting. Courting. Courtship has purpose behind it. Dating, it's kind of feeling, two people feeling each other out. If you like each other, fine, we'll hang out together, but there's no real purpose long term. Um, it's a lot of times it's short term. Uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Short term um, ideas behind it. What each individual is going to get short term out of the relationship, and there's no real forethought about, okay, what are we going to do later on? So she gets what she wants, he gets what he wants in the short term, and again, there's no real plan for long term. Okay, what are we going to do? It's a year now, we've been together. 2 years, we've been together. 3 years, you've seen and heard of relationships that have lasted as long as 10 years. But nobody's moving forward to, okay, what are we going to do? So it's just, playing it by ear, and hopefully it works out, and hopefully, things happen. But if you don't plan for it, if you don't have a purpose behind it, then what are we doing? 2, 3 years down the line, you may in your mind, as a woman, have decided that yeah, I want to date him for X amount of time, and then I want to move forward. Um, but that's not how men think. So if you don't have a plan, if you don't have a purpose, and it's not stated, there's no agreement. A lot of times, men will just take that as okay. Yeah, we're doing our thing and we're having fun and we're enjoying each other, but I don't really feel obligated to you in the sense that, we're not married, we're not, yeah, we seeing each other and everything. We may not see eye to eye. I may not see you as somebody who's a long-term partner for me. There's a lot of things that you don't know. There's a lot of gray areas. And a lot of times, if women are not willing to ask the questions that they need, get the information they need to make good decisions for themselves as to whether or not this guy is a long term um, someone who they might be interested in long term, then I don't know, ladies, you just sometimes you end up with being disappointed, frustrated, a lot of things that go along with failed relationships because, a lot of times you just didn't ask the questions you needed to know, in terms of, how to move the relationship forward.
So you're saying he really doesn't know they're in a relationship. So he's with her and other people. He's cheating, but to her, they're in a relationship.
To her, they're in a relationship. See, things is men, if it's not stated and you haven't come to an agreement, there's a gray area, which means you didn't say, and you hear that a lot in relationships. Well, I thought you were, or I assumed you were, assumption, how it is with assumptions. It's the lowest level of information for anyone in a situation, not knowing what it is that they're really dealing with. So,
Okay, what about they're in a committed relationship, be it married or single in a relationship? Why do men cheat when they're in a committed relationship?
that goes back to a lot of times upbringing, how they were brought up. Um, did dad cheat when growing up? Did he see those things and witness those things? Did he have a lot of friends who really were, in that lane of just, not really honoring relationships, not really sticking to any agreements? Um, it has a lot to do with the relationships around him that he's seen with other men or had with other men that pretty much, cheated. So if he's hanging around a lot of cheaters, obviously, he's going to believe that that's the way to go. So
What about Christian? If we talk about Christian men,
now, if we're talking about Christian men, it's a whole different ball of wax. Simply because when we say that a man is Christian, it is automatically assumed that he has a relationship with God, one that has boundaries, so to speak, and one that is understood. There's an understanding that in order for him to go into a relationship, if he's interested in being with someone, obviously, number one, there's no sex before marriage. So he is serious with his relationship with God. And so in the dating process, there are still standards that he has to keep to in terms of finding a wife. And also there's the period of time where he has to prepare himself to be a husband. So if you want a wife, that means you have to start preparing yourself to be a husband and ultimately understanding what it takes to be a husband should be the foremost thing in your mind. So men don't generally think of that, but it's something that should be happening in terms of when a man is serious about becoming a husband.
So I'm not sure you. So you're saying that a Christian man if he cheats, then that's a relationship issue he has with God.
Yeah. Basically, we go back to a relationship with God with everything, simply because, if your relationship with God isn't right, it's you're already starting at a deficit when it comes to relationships, because God is the one that helps and really leads you into finding that mate. Um, it's a man's responsibility to find the mate. God doesn't find them for you. I know a lot of people out there think that that's the case, but for the most part, you have to be in tune with God in terms of the things that you desire in your life. If you want the best from God, then you have to really walk step in step with Him, get to understand His ways, how He moves, how He thinks, and also come into the knowledge that He wants the best for you. Once you know that He wants the best for you, then it's no problem to ask Him to help you to find the best person for yourself. So we always start from there, a relationship with God first, as if you're a Christian. So.
Okay. So you're saying Christian men that cheat are not in tune with God. That's why they cheat.
Well, I mean, sin is something that men deal with, women deal with on a regular basis.
Temptation.
Temptation is something that you deal with whether you're single or married. That never goes away, and so we're fallible. I mean, we make mistakes. We um, come into points in our life where our judgment is poor, and we're destined to fall at times. I mean, no one walks this earth sinless, and so because of that, yeah, there's this struggle that we all have to deal with in terms of our flesh, in terms of whatever it is that the enemy throws at us from time to time. So yeah, and this is not to say that everybody cheats. I think that the enemy he picks opportune times to tempt us, and so because of that, if we're not really aware of what's happening, yeah, we'll fall into that temptation. So with that said, why men cheat? A lot of times it's just again they fall into that temptation. They're not in tune with the standards that God has set for them in their lives. And so, because of that, yeah, men will cheat.
I think you had said God doesn't choose your spouse for you. We talked about this before. It could be semantics or it could be we just don't agree. I think God had, okay, in the Old Testament, fathers chose their daughter's spouses. Okay. I think today God chooses, not necessarily chooses, He has in mind who He wants for you. And He presents them to you, presents opportunities, and it's up to you to agree with God. So God, you're praying for a spouse, God presents them, and then you can either agree with God and say, okay, God, this is who you have presented. Yes, I will go out with him or her. Or you say, no, God, I'm not feeling this person. I think it's the power of choice. But I do think God has in mind who He has for you.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I agree with that. He has in mind because He knows you so intimately. He knows what you like. He knows you well enough to bring what's best for you in terms of a spouse. Um, the thing is that you have to be as a man in tune with what you need versus what you want. And there are men that go to extremes and always seem to desire everything they want and get with women who are everything they want, but probably don't have what they need. And so his preparation for being a husband goes hand in hand with um, finding a spouse that has everything that he needs, to bring to the table in a relationship. And so he has to know to look out for those things in order to make sure that this is the woman for him or that's the woman for him.
This is loaded. There's so much we can say about this topic. I think a lot of times men are not emotionally mature. I'm gonna table this because I'm gonna go into the next video because that's just loaded. So that's a little teaser for our next video. So thank you so much for tuning in to Soul Talk with Sonia. This is going from Singleness to Marriage Part 1, and we hope to see you with Part 2.